the Canadian Canucks. No, not those Canucks. These Canucks. In the mid-1950s, the Canadian bus manufacturer Western Flyer introduced a line of long-distance buses that would compete with the likes of GM and MCI. While it would be updated for more than a decade, would these buses be able to effectively compete in a hyper-competitive intercity bus market? This is the story of the Western Flyer Canucks, the great Canadian buses you probably never heard of. Hi, this is Jeffrey. Now, in a few of my previous videos, we have seen how General Motors created some really great and iconic long-distance buses in the 1950s and 1960s. However, across the border in Canada, the manufacturer Western Flyer was also developing their own line of long-distance buses. These vehicles, known as the Canucks, were equally interesting, but were much lesser known. It's a really fascinating story, so let's get started in learning about the Western Flyer Canucks. Wartime restrictions during the first half of the 1940s put a hold on most bus production, but after the end of World War II, Canada's motorcoach industries, also known as MCI, provided Greyhound with a new model, the Courier. Updated multiple times in the 1950s, the product line culminated in a long-distance bus that had similarities to the GM PD 4104, and it helped propel the company for its success in the intercity market. But there was another interesting, perhaps lesser-known Canadian coach that was produced by another bus manufacturer with roots in Manitoba, the Western Flyer Canuck. Similar to MCI, Western Flyer was a small quantity manufacturer of mostly front-engine buses beginning in the mid-1930s. Their T40 model, produced from 1949 to 1955, was typical for its era, 35 feet long with seating for 40 passengers, with an International Harvester Red Diamond gas engine situated next to the driver. In 1955, and influenced by the GM Scenic Cruiser, they also built a deck-and-a-half stepped bi-level model, the T36-2L, although only 4 were built. With the American GM PD 4104 being introduced in 1953, and even closer to home, the MCI Courier 95 series in 1954, Western knew it had to raise the bar and get a more modern rear-engined model into its lineup to remain competitive in the marketplace. And in 1955, they introduced the P37 Canuck. The P37, denoting its passenger capacity, was 32 feet long and 96 inches wide. Similar to the MCI Courier, power was from an International Harvester Red Diamond 450 cubic inch gas 6-cylinder with the option of a Cummins 401 cubic inch JT6B diesel. Transmission was a Fuller 5-speed. In 1958, a longer 35-foot version, the P41, was built and became the standard Canuck model. As this was after the U.S. government won its antitrust case against GM, requiring it to share its drivetrain components, the GM 6-71 and newly introduced 6V-71 diesel engines were popular power options. With the competition moving forward, Western was again forced to play catch-up, and in 1964, the Canuck 500, with more modern styling and the more powerful GM 8V-71 engine, became available. But there would be just one more Canuck when the 500 was to be replaced just 3 years later. And so, what would this very last Canuck be that would make its debut in 1967? It was the Model 600! And it was unique in that it was lengthened and can now hold even more passengers than its predecessors. Now, let's take a look at some of the basic specifications of the final Canuck, the Model 600. Number 1, length is 38 feet. Number 2, width is 96 inches. Number 3, height is 10 feet. Number 4, weight is about 26,000 pounds. Number 5, passenger capacity is 43 to 45, depending upon configuration. Number 6, engine is the Detroit Diesel 8V-71N of up to 350 horsepower, and the transmission is the Spicer 4-speed 8844A. And finally, number 7, top speed is about 75 miles per hour. The Canucks were quality buses and coaches, but they simply could not overcome the competition, which was intense. Harry W. Bonaventure, a Canadian transportation industry analyst in the 1960s, gives some insight as to why this was the case.
Though well-built, the Canucks never achieved the popularity of GM or MCI coaches, mostly because they lagged behind these market leaders in introducing new models by approximately 5 years. As a result, in 1968, with the last Canuck 600A, the company exited the inner-city market to focus solely on transit buses. Unfortunately, those were even less successful, and in 1971, the company was purchased by the Manitoba government and renamed Flyer Industries Incorporated.
Even with the release of the D700 and E700 transit models and its mid-1970s involvement with the Americanized version known as the AM General Metropolitan, Western Flyer was still a financially weak company. Low-volume transit bus production continued until 1986, when it was purchased by Den Oudsten Bussen BV, a leading Dutch coach builder, and renamed it New Flyer Industries. Today, it's the leading manufacturer of transit buses in North America and the owner of its former competitor, MCI, which it purchased in 2015. And so, in quite an interesting twist, the Canucks are still somehow, in a way, with us. And so there it is, the story of the Western Flyer Canucks, definitely one of the lesser-known classic buses of North America. And there doesn't seem to be many, if any at all, restored Canucks out there, so if you know of one, let us know. And if you have any good Canuck story, also let us know in the comments, because that would be very interesting to hear. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this look at the Western Flyer Canuck buses. And as always, thank you so much for watching, and have a great day. Bye.